This entire year of work is garbage, Dean. Start over.
You deleted a year's worth of my work. You must be very confident to throw away something you never understood.
At 10:08 a.m., the room went silent just long enough for everyone to hear the soft click that ended a year of my work. 1 second. My report filled the conference screen. The next. It vanished deleted so casually you'd think it was a grocery list instead of the foundation of Havencraft Trading Group's entire client retention strategy. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The stiff, satisfied exhale behind me told me exactly who had done it. Morgan Hale, our new department head, stood there with her arms crossed and a smile as thin as the file she believed I should have produced. There, she announced to the 20 employees seated around the table, a full year of whatever this is, digital clutter, gone. Her voice floated with the kind of confidence only someone who worshipped efficiency metrics could muster. To her, nothing mattered unless it fit neatly into a spreadsheet cell. I kept my hands on the laptop, steady, even as heat crawled up my neck. 50 years old, 2 decades in commercial trade relations, and here I was being spoken to like an intern who mislabeled a folder. We're returning to clean. Professional standards, Morgan continued, tapping the delete key again, as if my now erased 52-page file might resurrect itself out of spite. No more sentimental note-taking, no more unnecessary detail, just numbers and outcomes. I still didn't turn. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing the embarrassment she wanted. Instead, I swallowed it just like every older employee who's ever been told their experience is outdated. The room stayed painfully quiet. A few colleagues shifted in their chairs, the kind of uncomfortable shuffling people do when they witness something they know isn't right but feel too trapped to challenge. And then, because life loves a good punchline, my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. Once, then again. Urgent, insistent. Morgan paused mid-lecture. "Is that your phone, Dean?" she asked, fake sweetness dripping off every word. I finally looked up at the blank screen, then at her, and let the smallest grin form the kind of tired, ironic smile only a man who has survived far too many corporate idiots can manage. "Seems so," I said quietly. She didn't know it yet, but that vibration in my pocket wasn't another meeting reminder. It was the first crack in the structure she believed she controlled. The one she had just destabilized with a single, triumphant tap of the delete key. If you've ever sat in a room where your work was dismissed with a single careless gesture, you know exactly how that moment feels. Before we go any further, tell me, where are you watching from right now? I always love hearing the places these stories reach, and if you're enjoying this journey so far, don't forget to subscribe. It helps our team keep creating stories that speak to what really happens behind those glass office doors. The call came faster than I could steady my breath. I had barely stepped into the hallway, still feeling the ghost of that delete key echoing through my spine. When my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize, for a moment, I considered letting it ring out. After all, 10:08 a.m. had already delivered enough surprises for one day, but something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe the stubborn instinct of a 50-year-old man who survived too many office storms, made me answer. "Dean Abbott," a voice asked, warm and confident. "This is Redwood Commerce Partners?" I straightened automatically. Redwood wasn't just a company. It was the firm founded by 3 of Havencraft's smartest former managers, the ones who left after years of clashing with the same efficiency-obsessed leadership that was now erasing my work. "We've been tracking what we call the Dean Abbott effect," the caller continued. "Retention spikes, contract renewals, clients requesting you by name. We know exactly who's been keeping Havencraft's commercial accounts alive." I blinked toward the conference room door, where Morgan was still lecturing the others like a prophet of spreadsheets. The timing felt unreal, almost comedic. That's so I said, letting a thin layer of dry humor coat the words. "Because someone just decided my work wasn't worth the file space it occupied. They didn't even hesitate. We're prepared to offer you the role of Director of Client Trade Relations, $520,000 annually. Plus equity. We want you to build our entire relationship division." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't just the number, though no one would complain about earning more than $500,000 a year. It was the validation, the unmistakable acknowledgement that someone saw value in the work I'd been quietly protecting from corporate tunnel vision. I leaned against the wall, pressing my palm to the cool paint as if grounding myself. "You're serious." "Dead serious," the voice replied. "And before you ask, we didn't get this information from Havencraft. We heard it from your clients. They've been talking. That stunned me more than the salary." My clients had noticed enough to speak up, enough to send word through the industry grapevine. I couldn't help the small laugh that slipped out, a soft, disbelieving sound edged with new hope. "You know," I murmured, "your timing is better than you realize." What I didn't say, at least not yet, was that this call wasn't just an offer. It was a crack of light cutting clean through the wreckage Morgan thought she'd created. And for the first time that morning, I felt the rising certainty that her delete key had opened a door she never intended for me to walk through. As I listened, something steady settled in my chest, a reminder that endings aren't always collapses. Sometimes they're quiet invitations to step into the life you were meant to build. Really, I didn't walk far, just far enough for the conference room door to close behind me with a soft, final click. The hallway outside was quiet in that strangely heavy way offices get after something humiliating happens. I leaned a shoulder against the wall and let the weight of the morning settle across my chest. It wasn't just the deletion. It was the unraveling of 18 months of work. 18 months of holding Havencraft's commercial division together while everyone else pretended the ship wasn't leaking from every seam. Back when I started, clients were slipping away like water through a cracked basin. Orders dropped, renewals froze, long-term partners quietly stepped over to competitors who treated them like actual human beings. I watched it happen week by week, listening to the strained excuses leadership repeated: market fluctuations, seasonal slowdowns, temporary instability. But I knew better. It wasn't the industry. It was us. So I built something different, something that didn't fit neatly into Morgan's beloved efficiency charts. I'd built a system of human memory, the brands each client preferred, the seasonal patterns of their inventory, the weeks they took family vacations, the birthdays of their children, the name of the golden retriever one client talked about like a grandchild. Small details, maybe, but in trade relations, small details are the difference between a contract renewed and a contract lost forever. And for 18 months, those details saved us. Morgan never understood. To her, clients were invoice numbers lined up in crisp columns, deliverables in, payments out, metrics updated. She believed commerce was a transaction, not a relationship. She saw my notes as clutter, my calls as inefficiency, my time is wasted on sentimentality, and now, with one tap of a key, she'd erased the proof of what I'd built as if deleting the file meant deleting the value. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sting fade into something steadier. The truth was simple, yes. She had deleted my documentation, but she hadn't deleted me. She hadn't deleted the conversations I'd had, the trust I'd earned, or the memories clients shared because they knew I listened. Data lives on screens. Connection lives in people. That thought settled into me like a quiet anchor. Morgan could wipe every file I created, but she couldn't erase a single genuine relationship. She couldn't rewrite the history our clients carried with them, the calls I took late at night, the solutions I tailored to their quirks, the loyalty built one honest conversation at a time, and standing there in that hallway, hurt but not broken. I realized something I hadn't seen clearly until now. The unraveling she began wasn't mine. It was hers. It struck me then that survival wasn't about documents or dashboards. It was about being remembered. And in that quiet truth, I found unexpected strength rising. I walked back into the conference room with the kind of calm that only comes after you've already lost the thing someone is still trying to threaten. Morgan was at the front, clicking through a news slide titled Standardized Trade Communication Protocols. Her voice droned on with the smooth confidence of someone completely unaware that the ground beneath her was already cracking. I slipped into my seat, folded my hands, and listened for exactly 12 seconds before I realized something important. I was done pretending this made sense. So I stood up. Not dramatically, not angrily, just decisively. "Before we move on," I said, my voice steady enough to freeze half the room mid-blink, "I have an announcement." 20 people turned in unison. Even the air conditioner seemed to pause, as if waiting for the next line. "I'm resigning from Havencraft," I said. No theatrics, no long explanation, just the truth delivered with the kind of clarity a man earns by making peace with himself. Effective immediately. The silence that followed was thick enough to lean on. Someone dropped a pen. Someone else whispered, "Wait." What Morgan froze at the front of the room, her stylus hovering in midair like she'd forgotten what hands were for. Then a chair scraped back hard. CEO Patrick Renner stood, face pale with the shock of a man realizing he should have paid attention 2 years earlier. "Dean," he said, gesturing toward the door. "Let's discuss this privately now," I said, and I smiled, not a cruel smile, just a tired, knowing one. "You let my work get deleted publicly. Seems fair the response matches the format." A few heads tilted, fighting not to smirk. Morgan found her voice first, and of course, it came out as a shriek. "You can't just walk out. You'll regret this." I looked at her. Not unkindly, if anything. I felt strangely grateful after all. If she hadn't hit delete, I might still be sitting here convincing myself loyalty was noble. "Morgan," I said gently, "I'm 50 years old. Trust me, I ran out of room for regret years ago." A laugh quick. Nervous escaped someone in the back row. Patrick shot them a warning glare, which only made it funnier. I gathered my notebook. Though there was nothing left in it, I still needed. "Thank you all," I said, meaning it more than they expected. Not because they'd made things easy, but because walking away felt like my spine had finally exhaled after 18 months of holding everything together. I stepped toward the door, feeling a weight lift with every stride. Behind me, I heard Patrick calling my name, Morgan demanding an explanation, and half the room whispering like students watching a fire drill that suddenly got interesting. But I didn't look back. For the first time that morning, the future felt wide open, and I walked into it without hesitation. 3 days after I walked out of Havencraft and into my new office at Redwood Commerce Partners, the world finally felt quiet enough for me to breathe. The desk was smaller. The view wasn't as dramatic, and the walls still smelled faintly of new paint, but there was something warm about it, something that felt like possibility instead of pressure. I had just settled in with a cup of coffee when my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. "Dean." It's Cliff Marbury. Cliff, the owner of a regional grocery chain and one of the most straightforward men I'd ever worked with, sounded unusually cheerful. Before I could even say hello, he continued, "I heard you jumped ship. Congratulations. Now, let's talk contracts." I blinked, sitting up a little straighter. "Contracts, all of them," he said. "I want to move everything to Redwood." I must have gone quiet long enough for him to laugh, because he added, "Don't sound so surprised. You're the only person in that entire company who remembers I'm allergic to cashews. Do you have any idea how many product samples people tried to send me over the years? You never messed that up. It shouldn't have warmed me the way it did. But it did. Maybe because the morning he mentioned his allergy, he'd slipped it into a story about nearly being hospitalized during a supplier showcase. Maybe because I'd remembered it. Not because it was important for business, but because it was important to him. Warmth spread slowly through my chest, the kind that comes from knowing small things actually matter. "Well," I said, letting the smile creep into my voice, "I'm glad that stuck." "Oh, it stuck." "All right," he replied. "By the way, Morgan called me earlier today. That made me pause. She did." "Oh? Yes?" "Said she wanted to reconnect strategically." "Whatever that means," Cliff chuckled. "But here's the funny part, she thought my company specialized in gourmet snacks." He paused for effect. "Dean, I run grocery stores, large ones. Has she ever even looked at my account?" I covered my eyes with one hand, torn between disbelief and a quiet, deeply satisfying amusement. It was so perfectly Morgan offering efficiency with zero understanding of who she was talking to. "That's, unfortunate," I said carefully. "For her, maybe," he answered. "For you, it just confirmed I'm moving everything your way." When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, coffee cooling beside me, feeling the subtle shift of something long overdue validation, not loud or dramatic, but soft and steady, the kind that says you weren't imagining your impact, the kind that makes the world feel a little kinder. And just like that, the first thread of Havencraft's unraveling pulled loose, this time. Gently, almost politely, the cascade began so quietly that I almost missed it, on my 4th morning at Redwood Commerce Partners, just as I was reviewing onboarding documents. My phone lit up with a familiar name, Larkin & Rose Fashion Distribution. I hadn't spoken to them since before I left Havencraft, but the moment I answered, their director launched straight in. "Dean, we heard you've moved," she said, her tone bright with relief. "We'd like to discuss transitioning our account to your new firm." I sat there blinking, stunned by how effortlessly the words flowed out of her mouth. No hesitation, no small talk. Just a clean, decisive shift. Apparently, I was the only person who treated her team like humans instead of order-processing robots, as she put it, before I could fully process that call. Another came in this time from a major home goods corporation I'd managed for nearly 2 years. Their vice president didn't bother with pleasantries at all. "We want to work with you again," he said. "You remember our peak seasons. You remember our warehouse constraints. And frankly, you're the only one who ever bothered to ask how our rollout timelines actually worked." His sincerity carried the weight of a small apology, as if he felt guilty for staying with Havencraft this long. By noon, 3 more clients reached out one after another in a steady rhythm that felt both surreal and quietly triumphant. A textile importer, a kitchen appliance company, a specialty food distributor. Every call carried the same message delivered in slightly different voices. "You treated us like real people. That's why we're coming to you." Not once did anyone mention the contracts I'd managed or the revenue I'd helped generate. What they remembered were the conversations, the unexpected questions, the notes I kept because I genuinely cared about their workflows, their challenges, their quirks. It was overwhelming in the strangest, softest way, like watching a tide you didn't control roll in exactly where you needed it. Then came the twist I didn't expect. One client, a long-term partner with an impeccable sense of timing, lowered his voice and said, "By the way, Dean, you might want to know Morgan sent out a personalized outreach email to all of us this morning." I braced myself, half amused, half horrified. "She addressed me as Harold," he continued. "You know my name isn't Harold." I rubbed my forehead, biting back a laugh. "She used the same email template for everyone," he added. "Forgot to change the names. It was so painfully on brand for her that I didn't even feel angry, just validated. Where she saw efficiency. Clients saw indifference. Where she saw wasted time. They saw respect, as the calls kept coming. A gentle kind of satisfaction settled over me, not revenge born of bitterness, but the calm assurance that good work simply finds its way home. The first sign that things were unraveling at Havencraft came quietly, just a short message from a former coworker that popped up while I was reviewing a client file. "You might want to sit down." It read, "Revenue's tanking." I didn't need the details, but they arrived anyway. By the end of the 3rd week after my resignation, Havencraft had officially lost nearly half its commercial revenue. Not rumored, not speculated, confirmed, documented, reported in numbers even Morgan couldn't manipulate into something prettier. I didn't celebrate, not outwardly, but there was a particular kind of silent satisfaction in knowing the very thing she had deleted, human connection, was the thing she needed most. It was poetic in a way. The kind of irony life usually saves for people who insist they're smarter than everyone else. As the days rolled on, updates trickled in from people still inside the building. According to one account, Morgan tried to regain control by launching a new strategic client engagement initiative, in her mind. This meant sending an automated customer survey campaign to reactivate loyalty and reinforce brand trust. In reality, it meant blasting dozens of surveys to email addresses that hadn't been active since some clients retired, sold their businesses, or died. One former client's grandson, who now ran the company, apparently called Havencraft to ask why his grandfather was being invited to rate his recent onboarding experience. I shouldn't have smiled when I heard that, but I did. Meanwhile, CEO Patrick Renner, usually calm to the point of boredom, was now holding emergency meetings so frequently that employees joked the conference room needed a private cot. Morning crisis huddles turned into lunchtime crisis briefings, followed by afternoon crisis reconvenings to reassess real-time developments. Translation: the situation was bad, getting worse, and no one had any idea how to stop the bleeding. And Morgan, well, she did what Morgan always did when cornered. She invented a villain. Apparently, the survey fiasco wasn't her mistake. It wasn't poor planning. It wasn't the result of her obsession with shortcuts. No. According to her, the system had malfunctioned, a glitch, a server error, a software anomaly, anything that wasn't her. The best part, I learned this not from rumors, but from a message sent directly to me by an old colleague. It arrived late in the afternoon while I was preparing notes for Redwood's strategy session. "Thought you'd enjoy this," he wrote. "Morgan's blaming the losses on a software bug now. Says the system misinterpreted her intentions." We're all trying not to laugh. I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. Morgan, the champion of efficiency. The self-appointed guardian of clean data was blaming a fictional software glitch for a crisis caused entirely by her refusal to see clients as people. Not even a dramatic, cinematic glitch, just a vague error. It was almost generous of her, really. Machines made kinder scapegoats than the truth. I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there for a quiet moment, feeling a deep, measured satisfaction settle into place. The kind that doesn't need applause or revenge or even recognition. The kind that whispers. You see, the universe keeps receipts. 6 weeks after I walked out of Havencraft for the last time, the numbers finally told the truth everyone had tried to ignore. The company had lost 62% of its commercial clients, an implosion so dramatic that even the most optimistic analysts stopped using words like temporary setback and started using words like unsustainable. I saw the figures not in a memo but in an industry publication, a cold, clinical chart showing a decline so steep it looked like a cliff edge. For a long moment, I simply sat there, letting the weight of it settle, not with gloating, not with anger, just a solemn recognition that justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't come shouting. It arrives with the simple, undeniable shape of consequence. Inside Havencraft's headquarters, panic had matured into something sharper formal scrutiny. The board of directors, normally content to let the executive team manage its own chaos, initiated a full internal audit, according to the message I received from a former colleague. The boardroom felt like a courtroom every time they convened. Spreadsheets, emails, communication logs, everything was examined. Every justification was challenged. Every excuse was tested for cracks. And eventually, those cracks widened into a conclusion no one could soften Morgan's cold contact strategy. Her obsession with efficiency over engagement and her decision to replace relationship-driven communication with automated scripts had directly caused the client exodus. For once, no one could blame the market. No one could blame seasonal cycles. No one could blame external pressures. The disaster had a name, and it was hers. When I first heard the result of the investigation, I expected to feel triumphant, but the emotion that rose inside me wasn't triumph at all. It was something heavier, quieter, almost reverent, a kind of internal exhale that came from watching truth reclaim its rightful place. All the conversations I'd had, all the quiet battles I'd fought, all the months of feeling dismissed and misunderstood. It was as if they finally stood up in that boardroom and spoke for themselves. Then came the twist, delivered in a single, almost sheepish text message. Morgan resigned today. Personal reasons. But everyone knows she was pushed out. I read the words twice, absorbing their simplicity. No drama, no apology, no acknowledgement of the damage she'd done. Just a neat, convenient exit wrapped in a polite phrase. For a moment, something stirred inside me, something that felt almost like grief. Not for her, but for the version of the company that could have existed if she had chosen differently. Then, the feeling sharpened into something firmer, steadier. This was the justice I had been too tired to fight for. Not revenge, not retaliation, just the clear, unmistakable outcome of choices made and ignored, lessons refused, warnings dismissed. As I set my phone down, a quiet certainty bloomed in my chest. Havencraft's collapse wasn't mine to carry. It never had been. But its truth, finally revealed, was mine to witness. And that was enough. The call came on a quiet Thursday morning, the kind where the sunlight settles gently across the desk and nothing feels rushed. I had just finished drafting a proposal for Redwood when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't expected to see again, Patrick Renner. For a moment, I simply stared at the screen, feeling a strange mix of calm and curiosity. 6 weeks earlier, hearing his name might have brought irritation or disbelief. Now, it barely stirred anything at all. I answered anyway. "Dean," he began, his voice carrying that polished steadiness executives practice in boardroom mirrors. "I'd like to discuss an opportunity." The word opportunity made me smile small. Inward. Patient. "I'm listening," I said. He cleared his throat in the way people do when preparing to say something they should have said long ago. "The board and I agree that Havencraft needs a new direction, a stronger direction. We'd like you to return as Director of Commercial Relations, full authority, full autonomy, and a salary package 3 times your previous one for several seconds." I let the offer hang between us. As light and insubstantial as dust motes drifting through the air, a younger version of me might have felt vindicated. Another version might have felt tempted, but the man I'd become the man rebuilt by clarity, respect, and steady work felt only quiet understanding. "Patrick," I said softly, "you only value people when the numbers begin to scream." There was an audible pause, long enough that I imagined him pressing his thumb against his temple, trying to decide whether to defend himself or concede. Eventually, he exhaled. "I won't deny the timing." "That's the problem," I replied. "The timing always mattered more to you than the people behind it." He didn't argue, and strangely, I appreciated that. There was something almost dignified about his silence, but then came the twist, the kind of question that reveals exactly why a door needed to stay closed. "Dean," he said, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret, "do you have a backup copy of your old client data? It would help us rebuild faster." I leaned back, the smile coming easily, this time warm, amused, and edged with something wiser than triumph. "I don't need a copy," I said. "The clients remember for me." It took a moment for the meaning to land on his end of the call. When it did, the silence felt heavier, more honest. "I see." He finally whispered, "I know you do." I said, "But I'm exactly where I should be," when I hung up. There was no rush of victory, no dramatic swell of pride, just a steady, grounded certainty, the kind that comes when you choose growth over familiarity, respect over convenience, and a future built on trust rather than salvage. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, unmistakably whole. A year can change the shape of a life in ways you don't recognize until you pause long enough to look back. 1 year after walking out of Havencraft with nothing but my dignity and a buzzing phone in my pocket. I stood in the corner office of Redwood Commerce Partners, the one with the soft morning light and the skyline view, and saw a version of myself I hadn't realized I was still capable of becoming. Senior partner. Head of personalized commercial relations for the entire region, a role built not on efficiency charts, but on the quiet, stubborn belief that people matter more than processes. What made it sweeter wasn't the title or the office, it was the foundation beneath it. Nearly every major client who had once worked with me at Havencraft had eventually found their way to Redwood. They came steadily, confidently, as if following a path they already trusted. Their loyalty didn't come from strategy decks or marketing campaigns. It came from conversations, memories, small details that told them they were seen. Those relationships became the backbone of Redwood's most successful year on record growth that wasn't loud or rushed, but steady and deeply earned. Meanwhile, Havencraft moved in the opposite direction. Reports filtered through the industry asset liquidation, shrinking departments, 2 branch closures, and a 40% sell-off just to stay afloat. It was strange watching it from a distance, not with bitterness, but with the solemn understanding that some collapses aren't tragedies. They're outcomes. Then came the twist I never expected. One afternoon, an email appeared in my inbox from a name I hadn't seen in months, Morgan Hale. She wrote politely, almost gently, asking if I had any advice for rebuilding her career. For a long moment, I simply sat there, feeling a quiet blend of closure and compassion. Then I typed the only response that felt honest and kind. Start by treating clients like real people, not numbers. I didn't send anything more. I didn't need to. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see during those last days at Havencraft. Cruelty doesn't destroy you. It simply clears the path toward the place you were meant to stand. Sometimes the hardest endings are the ones that deliver you to your beginning. If this journey resonated with you, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. And if Dean's story gave you a spark of hope, please like, share, leave a comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep creating stories that remind people that justice quiet. Steady justice always finds its way home.